I like to think of myself as an asymmetrical game connoisseur. I've played a lot of them, ranging from Sonic.exe games to Sonic.exe games, old Roblox aesthetic slop to Dead by Daylight, and even a pretty cool one like Die of Death. Even the ones that really don't get played anymore like Spider and 1v5s on Black Ops 2. Point is, basically I've played them all, and I've gotta say, it seems that no matter how mediocre one is, it always seems to grab my attention and keep me hooked for at least a week. Not mentioning anyone in particular. Hell, I have more hours on Outcome Memories than I'd like to admit. And yet, there is one Roblox game that has exploded in popularity recently that I've been playing. It's an asymmetrical game called Violence District. Now, obvious plagiarism aside, I do want to take a more objective look at the game instead of just comparing it to Dead by Daylight. While I do have a lot of gripes with the game, even excluding the copying of game mechanics and the OST being not so original, with most of the OST being really easy to find, and the only one that does seem original is the Jeff the Killer chase theme. Otherwise, I do really want to give this game a fair shot. After all, I thought Outcome Memories was a super good game, and it is fundamentally heavily inspired by a different game. With all of this out of the way, if you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike. Subscribe and join my community Discord if you want to, and hop into this complete review of Violence District. Now, because the game is an asymmetrical game, that means the core gameplay between the two sides is completely different, and while I will get into more nuanced things later, I'll just give a basic rundown of the game right now. There are two sides, survivors and killers. The survivor's job is to complete 5 generators and escape using the 2 exit gates that spawn on the map. Meanwhile, the killer is supposed to kill up to 5 survivors by downing them and putting them onto spikes. 3 spikes and they die completely. Every killer has a different ability that they can use, making every killer at least a little unique in how they play. With that basic information out of the way, let's get into the true meat and potatoes of this video. Survivors have always been a bit weird to balance in asym games, and they are typically the biggest point of contention when it comes to said balancing. Just look at Dead by Daylight drama channels, no one is claiming that game is killer-sided. No, but seriously, it is a huge issue to balance these guys correctly because of how asymmetrical games work. There are many of them versus just one big bad, so generally, it usually ends up being a survivor-sided game. And Violence District is no different. For example, survivor perks. Most of them, I won't lie to you guys, are not that good or otherwise too situational to see a lot of use. For example, there is a perk in this game called Desperate, where all it does is allow you to wiggle out of a killer's grasp slightly faster when they pick you up. See, there's a whole wiggle mechanic in the game that stops you from being held indefinitely and taken hostage. If this wiggle bar hits 100%, you can break free and run away. So realistically, this isn't a perk that ever goes into like survivor perk builds because it does so little to help people. Like, why would I take this perk when instead I could take a perk like Quick Recovery where I can vault and get a large speed boost? It doesn't make too much sense. That's what I'm talking about when I say balancing survivors in games like this is quite fickle. Especially with there being 30 perks and being only able to take like 3 at a time. This isn't even factoring in survivor items, which again are wildly imbalanced from gambling to practical to very weak. Items like the parrying dagger, which, by the way, is held in the left hand, which is how parrying daggers are used in the offhand, so bravo, nice attention to detail, are good if used in the right hands, while items like the Shadow Clone are, in my experience anyway, pretty bad. They usually don't fool the killer like 9 times out of 10, and it makes the item basically useless unless the killer is new. The imbalance is so much that I barely ever see adrenaline shots be used or the Shadow Clone, and instead it's usually the dagger, flashlight, or the portal thing, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a lot of items to choose from if people are just going to run the same things every game anyway. And none of this is to mention the actual survivor gameplay of Violence District. It's a lot of waiting. On generators, on heals from your teammates, it's a lot. For example, generators. You hold a button, and you click a different button once in a while. Absolutely riveting gameplay. I know, like, you don't need to tell me twice. I'm sold. No, but seriously, it is quite boring. It's the exact problem that Dead by Daylight has. And with this being a mandatory objective, you would think that they would have rectified this in some way. At the very least, make the skill checks like less mind-numbing than one button. As much as I hate to bring up Forsaken, even they do it better with their generator gameplay, where you have puzzles you have to complete instead of just click a button in a very forgiving time frame. I do get that this is supposed to be like an authentic Dead by Daylight experience in Roblox, but it just ends up being boring. I'm surprised it keeps this player base with how the attention spans are with people who play Roblox nowadays. Even Behavior, the developers of Dead by Daylight, have tried to rectify this in the past with mechanics like the Doctor's Madness that moves the skill checks across the screen and makes them harder to hit. Now, I'm obviously not saying this has to be the hardest thing ever, You know, a little gameplay mixed in somehow would go a long way. What if, like, instead of skill checks this way, you can make it more interactive by having to do a memory game like Simon, or do a puzzle, or at the very least give you more than one skill check every 20 seconds. This also applies to healing, but healing gets a pass because it doesn't take more than a minute to do, unlike fixing generators. Now, inarguably, the best part of Survivor gameplay are the chases. In them, you have quite a bit at your disposal. Pallets can be used as a temporary stun and vault spot unless they're broken. Vaults are forever and can be used as a get-out-of-jail-free card if you hit a fast vault, and playing mind games with the killer is often the most engaging part of the whole game. I will say that in terms of Survivor gameplay, this is probably the best you're gonna get. There's skill expression, fun, the ability to test out cool perks and items, and it feels second to doing generators. It's really sad too, like, I'll get into killers more in depth soon, but with how the different killers play, most games do end up being fairly unique in at least how chases play out. But since the primary objective is to just do generators as fast as possible, you just end up doing those instead of having the actual fun part. And since the game is on Roblox, oftentimes you can get 3 or 4 gens done without seeing the killer once because it's being played by a little Timmy on an iPad from 2013. This, however, really isn't even an issue that can be fixed because it's so baked into the fundamental level of the game. It's based off Dead by Daylight, which, as you may or may not know, was originally a passion project that the devs did in their free time that they never expected to blow up like it did. So it never really got the chance to be fine-tuned to be more interactive, and since Violence District is just a straight rip of Dead by Daylight, it has the exact problems. Chases themselves can eventually become formulaic too, especially if you're a player of Dead by Daylight already. While it is true that this is the most fun part of the game, at least from a Survivor standpoint, it's also true that that's an extremely low bar to rise above. Most chases just end up boiling down to run to a tile with a pallet, run around it until you know you can't make another loop, drop said pallet, throw in some window vaults and dagger whiffing, and that's the chase dynamic in this game. This is an oversimplification, but you get my point, right? It starts to become something more akin to a side quest that really isn't skill, and more so how well can you follow a flowchart against a specific killer. It's gameplay that ultimately tries to copy too much from a different game, and in my eyes, fails to be anything more than mediocre because of it. There are some really cool ideas, like the gun and dagger items, but as Survivor stands, right now anyway, it's bland and boring at its worst, and formulaic and repetitive at best. Killer gameplay, on the other hand, is different. This is, in my opinion, where the game shines. Every killer feels unique enough to warrant them being there, unlike Dead by Daylight, where some killers have started to blend together. The killer roster in Violence District is still small enough to where every killer feels warranted. Think for just a moment, right? This is a thought experiment. The difference between the Super Smash Bros. 64 roster and the Ultimate Smash roster. 64 was a small fighter roster, meaning every spot had to feel special and unique to warrant them being there. And Smash Ultimate has a lot of variety, but a lot of the characters are just clones of each other. The same principle applies here. No two killers play exactly alike. For example, Myers and the Legion, I mean Jeff the Killer. They are completely different killers. One is very fast-paced and the other is a stalker. And the rest are like this as well. Mr. Chickenhead is a gambler, everything about him is random. The Knight is more of a methodical killer, where you have to think more. Jason is a brute anti-loop who just can say no to pallets. They all serve a purpose and playstyle in the game. There are 2 killers who are kind of outliers in terms of strength, at least in my opinion, but we'll get to them soon. The killer gameplay, since they have to balance so much, is obviously going to be the more skill-required role. They have to balance generators, who hasn't been hooked, who has, when to take chase and when to not. It's a lot, and honestly, I live for this kind of macro play. It's much more fun, in my opinion, having to juggle many things at once. It's certainly more engaging than hold a button and click a different button. It's also more skill expressive with mind games, things like hiding your red stain or double backing, using your ability to win at a loop. It's all very fun, if not frustrating at times, but I like a good challenge, and with the very thought out roster, there really isn't anything outwardly bad I can say about the killer role specifically other than the hit detection is like very jank. You do kind of have to be in tickling distance for an M1 to connect with a lunge, which can be annoying at times. I will say that because the game is on Roblox, you won't always get a full lobby. In terms of like teams of 3 or 4, generators can go by very fast because how they get done is dependent on how many people there are in the lobby. My favorite games are with 4 people where the generators do feel faster, but it still feels like you could defend them if you're fast enough. Just for a second, I do want to show off how different killers are in this game. I've gotten to play as all of them, and none of them play similarly at all. I mentioned this briefly earlier, but I really want to show this off and what makes them different and why. Take for example Jason. He's the starter killer, and honestly, he works well for a starter. He's not too complicated, has reliable moves that are easy to understand. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that pressing Q makes you faster and pressing the right mouse button makes you tank pallets like, a tank. But none of them are really hard carried by their power, if that makes any sense. Well, all but one, but we'll get to that. You still have to play around the basic attack instead of just relying entirely on your power to do all the damage, which makes the killers feel fair while also being able to give them cool abilities. This is something that I feel Dead by Daylight has strayed away from with releases like the Bubba and the newest Vecna, where you really only ever see them use the chainsaw or the tentacle things for the downs. Having a game where the killer has to use all the tools available to them is better for the game, and for once, I have to say Violence District did it right, even if most of the killers are heavily inspired by Dead by Daylight. Now, I know I've been saying that we'll get to it for a while now, so you have Jeff, who is really good at spreading injuries but has no actual chase power, the Subject, who is an anti-loop with a really telegraphed but very large lunge, Jason with decent map traversal and an anti-loop with his rage but long cooldowns, and then you have the Vale and Myers. Myers is really weak in this game. He takes a while to get his stock meter up to be able to actually use his power that he ends up losing generators trying, and the Vale is really strong. I'd argue the strongest in the game at the moment. She can hit you with insane snipes and even through walls. Her power is really good. So good in fact that she doesn't really even need her M1s, unless you're me and you actually suck at hitting the spears. I believe that she's really the only flawed design in this game, at least fundamentally, and maybe I'm lying to your face though. I will say that Vale isn't a super popular character, at least in Publix, because she is kind of demanding to use and expensive, but I digress. See, in this game, there are currencies that you get by playing the game, and the Vale costs a lot of them. Actually, this game is pretty grindy, from getting screws and medallions to use perks, to having to play a killer for quite a few matches to unlock all their perks so that any killer can use them. It's quite a hassle and my biggest gripe with the game. I don't want to have to play old boring Myers to get a perk that I really want, and then just never touch Myers again. While I get this is how you get players to test out new killers, it is quite annoying at times. The killer role is especially grindy because you can't play killer every round. At least in Dead by Daylight, you can get away with grinding because you're able to just play killer over and over again. It doesn't work here as well though, because you can go like an hour without playing killer once if you're in a full lobby. And to get all the perks on one killer, you need to be level 45 with them. You can't even cheese level them like you can in Dead by Daylight by spending blood points you get on your favorite killer on ones you don't want to play but have a really cool perk you want. You're forced to play that killer if you want that perk in this game. I don't want to play no boring ass Myers or Subject, sorry to the mains of these guys out there, but they're boring, let's be honest, to get a perk for the more fun killers. That's just not fun. The maps in this game are both decent and really awkward at times. There are 6 maps in the game: the Shrine, the Docks, the Asylum, the Camp, the Club, and Mercy Hospital. The maps themselves are fine, I guess. They're not really anything that's gonna knock your socks off. They do all suffer from the same problem where some of the areas of the maps are just completely safe and some areas are just death if you get caught in them. Me personally, I get the design philosophy, but I'm more of a moderate danger throughout the entire map kind of guy, which is why my favorite map in this game is Firelink Shrine, because it is the only one that really feels this way. The maps aren't really different every game either. The pallets and generators will almost spawn in the exact same places, which really kills match variety. A spot that is safe in one match will always be safe in that map for every match you play. That really sucks because one of the best factors of Dead by Daylight is that the procedural generation really helps keep that game fresh even if you've played it 100 times. Violence District doesn't really keep that crucial thing that keeps replayability up, and since earlier I talked about the gameplay loop being pretty stale, I think you can see my argument about this game. It's all just very stale. Even the most fun parts of it are repetitive. This really isn't even an ASIM game thing either. I don't feel this way about Outcome Memories, and I played it for months, even when there was just one killer. I feel Violence District is different though, and worse because it doesn't really try to do anything different. It's a complete copy of a game from 2016, and it kind of shows. It doesn't do anything to differentiate itself from a 2016 game. My final gripes are things that I couldn't really cleanly fit anywhere else, such as the soundtrack being not original. Most of it is taken from somewhere else, I hope with permission, or at the very least it's not copyrighted. 2 of the killers are basically licensed, with Jason even having his mom talk to him every time you get a hit. I doubt they got the license to that. Basically, my gripes come down to the somewhat murky practices with non-original work. I don't see any music credited in the description, and that just comes off as scummy. It's a real shame too, considering the one actually original song for this game, the Jeff Chase theme, is a certified banger. All in all, in terms of Roblox ASIMs, it's passable. It's a 5 out of 10 ranking. Not absolutely phenomenal, but not terrible. It's not good, it's not bad. It's certainly a game built for like 1 or 2 matches a day, small doses rather than a long session, which, you know, doesn't really fit because you have to grind the game a lot, but whatever. All I know is, why would I play janky Dead by Daylight on Roblox when I could play, well, still janky Dead by Daylight, but at least it's the real thing. It's a shame, too. The people working on this game are obviously very talented. It's just a shame that the talent is going to the clone instead of an original work. I'd be willing to bet that if this team made an original game, it would probably be one of the better games on Roblox, and probably a game that I would be willing to spend a lot more time on, because it's not copying Dead by Daylight when I have Dead by Daylight on Steam. And that is the end of the video. My name is Sarcasm, and if you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, if you join my community, God. And that is the end of the video. My name is Sarcasm. If you liked